Alright guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks a lot for tuning in, really appreciate it. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope you got a chance to watch the fights last night. I was actually working, so I caught up with most of them today. But we are going to be talking about Terence Crawford becoming a 4-weight division world champion. He beat Israil Madrimov and claimed the 154-pound WBA belt in a anticlimactic main event. I think we can agree on that. Certainly one for the purists. You know, there was a lot of high-skilled chess, cerebral boxing going on there. And when you look at how people have kind of scored this and how the, I don't want to say fallout, but anytime there's a big fight, you always get a lot of different opinions. But this one has got quite a divided opinion because of the nature and how subjective scoring boxing can be. And many fans don't actually even know how to score it, and it's not their fault. I think HBO used to do a great job of actually helping the viewer, you know. I'll get into the scoring criteria in a little bit, because there are criteria you have to stick by, but even if you stick by those criteria, they're not always that clear cut. And when it's so nip and tuck in a lot of rounds, especially some of the earlier rounds where there's not a whole lot going on, but you have to bring in, let's just talk about the criteria now. There's 4 criterias. Clean, effective punching, and that is the most important one. And I was actually looking on online today just to get some actual judges and see what they say about it and their understanding. And it was actually Steve Weisfeld did a column, and I disagreed on one of the things. I'll explain it. It just shows you how crazy the sport is. Where I was like, what he said doesn't make sense. But clean, effective punching is by far the most important thing. Criteria, and from just a basic point of view, from a casual fan, not to use that term, but for someone that doesn't know how to score and you see somebody hitting somebody else clearly, then it's easier to score. But you have that clean, effective punches, right? The word effective could be subjective too. Then you have defense, right? I'm going to get on to why I disagreed with Steve Weisfeld on this in a minute. But defense. Now, what does that even mean, really, to be honest? Like, obviously, I'll get onto it now, actually, because we're on the topic. His explanation was that he uses saying if everybody's defense is the same, but one fighter throws 10 punches and the other one throws 0, that round's a draw. And I was like, wait, if one person threw 10 punches and the other person is defending it using their boxing skills, that should go to the fighter that outmaneuvered the other fighter, I thought. Anyway, then you have ring generalship, okay, which is, again, a little misunderstood, but typically it's the fighter that is fighting their fight, maneuvering around the ring, going and doing what they are supposed to be doing, basically. Bernard Hopkins, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, you know, Bud Crawford. Intelligent fighters that are using the ring in their advantage, fighting the fight that they want to fight. Again, it's a little subjective, and it's not like a kindergarten way of understanding it. You have to really understand that to actually apply it, because I would say probably Crawford was the ring general. Madrimov appeared to be the effective aggression is the last criteria, okay? So you have clean, effective punches, defense, ring generalship, effective aggression. And now you see how, when you apply those, when it's nip and tuck, how tight you can get. I mean, you saw the DAZN commentary had Sean Porter had Crawford up, Sergio Mora had Madrimov up. I think Chris Mannix might have had Crawford up. But so how are you applying the criteria is really important, you know? Like, clean, effective punching, there was very nip and tuck early on, as I said. So you have to bring in the other criterias, and it kind of leaves it open for debate, I think, to a degree. But like, Madrimov wasn't really being that effective when he was being aggressive. He wasn't really letting his hands go, and he wasn't throwing too many more than one punch. But I thought he boxed a really, really good fight. I thought one thing that I noticed, which was really, Bud was looking like he was really thinking there. Madrimov was really making him think with that front foot, tricky, herky-jerky, rhythm, fluid, loose, patient style. and he would come and he was doing a lot of feints, which Bud wasn't really buying on the feints. It was the little step backs after that, and then the movement, and then coming forward. That's the Uzbek style a little bit. They're very front foot happy, and they like to apply that pressure with a front foot bounce kind of thing. He's got more of a fluid move like that, and his arms are coming up and down. There's a lot to deal with, really, from a thought process. It was a very cerebral fight, and shout out to the people that thought this was going to be a close fight. I did not. And some people say it wasn't a close fight. I think many think Bud probably won by like 1 or 2 rounds, and I'm in that camp as well. I watched it today I was working last night, so I watched it a couple of times on this bootleg copy, which wasn't the best. So I'm going to reserve a full, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I'm going to watch it again and score it properly. But watching it twice with the sound off and with the sound on, and what I could see, it looked like Bud was slightly edging out some of the earlier rounds, and then obviously he finished quite strong in the championship rounds. And Madrimov had his moments in the middle rounds, but he could have quite easily won a couple of the earlier rounds too. It was a complicated fight to score, especially when you can't see a full screen. But you know, ultimately, when I look from that, I'm like, okay, I think by the looks of it, Bud probably nicked it by a couple of rounds, maybe 1, you know. But Madrimov, one thing I didn't see him doing was holding his concentration and having the discipline to fight like that for 12 rounds, because I thought he was going to end up making a lot more mistakes, getting a bit more impatient, you know, falling in on his shots, which he didn't do anywhere near as much. He did it a couple of times, and actually Bud caught him with a couple of left uppercuts, which is a punch I thought he might land, just more viciously, you know. But he's got a bit of a chin, Madrimov. But, you know, and Madrimov was catching Bud with he was mixing the right hands up, hitting him with the straight rights, coming in with the overhand rights. Some of them were grazing, a lot of them were clean. Madrimov caught Bud with a real clean left hook. I think it was in the 8th or 9th. That's when Madrimov had his best success. It was a complicated fight, I thought. But I thought Bud won, and I thought Madrimov boxed really, really well. And it's another example of a fighter losing, but your stock goes up. And this is what I said about Caleb Plant the other day. I'm like, he's lost 2 out of his last 3 fights, but his stock's gone up. Not just because he's decided to take on the best, but it's how you fight. You know, he really applied himself well. Even in the Benavidez fight after losing to Canelo, he was fighting his heart out. And Madrimov, I would have liked to seen him. You know, I think part of the game plan was to not be too overly aggressive and not be too falling on your stuff. And he actually, Bud neutralized that jab to the stomach, which is Madrimov's better punch, which was just a little, just a distance situation, and constantly resetting their feet and constantly like feinting each other out, feint, level change. Madrimov basically, his style was just a level change. He was just level changing all the time. That's an exhausting way to fight, and because he's trained like that and being able to fight like that for most of his career, I think is the reason why he was able to keep it up, because that's an exhausting way to fight mentally. And that's what I thought. I thought it'd be a tighter earlier, which it was, but I thought Bud would peel away after figuring him out in the middle rounds, but it wasn't to be. You know, Madrimov hung in there and had some good success. I think it was 8 and 9 more so. But again, I really would love to watch it back and score it properly with a full screen, seeing exactly what's happening, applying all the criteria, because you'd have to say, I would say Bud was the ring general. I would have to say Bud's defense, by the looks of it, I mean, they're fairly nip and tuck with the defense, really, because Bud wasn't exactly really landing so many at will on Madrimov easy. Madrimov was always just a little bit out of range, and just that rhythm and style was really definitely, and his size too, his physicality, his strength definitely was, you know, he's a bigger man. He's a much bigger man. You could see the size of his back. That was definitely, you know, giving something more things for Bud to think about. But, you know, I think people, obviously, including me, I thought Bud was going to dominate a bit strong, but clearly win. And, you know, I think when people do expect that, they see a super fighter not being so super, then they put him in the L bracket. I don't know. It does make sense why so many cards are off and so many people have different opinions because of the subjectivity of boxing and the scoring criteria. But you know, as I said, even the criteria I'm reading about Steve Weisfeld didn't add up to me. You know, he didn't, like, explaining the defense to me, that didn't make any sense. Because Willie Pep back in the day, a Hall of Fame fighter, won a round from not throwing a punch. So if your opponent's throwing a bunch of punches and you're evading them, or you're using your boxing skills to avoid them, surely you get the advantage if you're not getting hit. So yeah, it was a bizarre statement Steve Weisfeld said, but you know, he also alluded to the fact that judges have their preferred style. We know this. So if you prefer somebody coming and putting the pressure on straight away as a judge, and there's two of those, you're gonna lean towards that. Obviously, there weren't two of those because, well, I mean, I'm just saying the subjectivity of boxing is just really weird. But ultimately, bit of a lackluster main event, although us boxing fans, the purists, do enjoy stuff like that to a degree. We do want a bit of violence as well, including me. But the whole show and the whole card, I was going to make a, I made the thumbnail. I was going to get ready to sit down to shoot the video, but I had so much going on Thursday, I never got around to doing it. So apologies for that, guys. I really, I'll go through who I thought was going to win. I actually was picking Bacoli to beat Anderson. I really was. Hindsight is 2020. Obviously, I'm not just saying it now, but I was like, man, if Anderson fights the way he normally does, he's going to be fighting a massive guy who can punch, and you know, he can box a little bit. And he's got sharp, sneaky power. And I saw an interview with Dave Allen, who sparred Bacoli, and he's always very honest and very down the line with stuff, and that got me thinking. But even before I saw that interview with Dave Allen, I was picking Bacoli. I just thought, I don't know how Anderson's going to get him out of there, and you have to get him out of there. He might. I was picking Miller to beat Ruiz. I'd never seen Israil Miller come in shape like that. I know that was a draw. I haven't seen these fights live, so I couldn't tell you if that was good scoring or not. But I was going for Israil Miller in that fight, just from the fact he'd had a training camp and he was in that kind of shape. And Ruiz was inactive, and you know, Miller was sounding good and confident. And again, they're both seems like their stock will go up from that. Valenzuela, I didn't pick him. I picked Pitbull to knock him out. But congrats to Jose Valenzuela. Wow, great performance by the looks of it. I've got to watch the whole fight. But you know, I saw an interesting quote today online about how, I think it was Eddie Futch used to say, a bull can't charge you when it's running in circles. And I just thought that was like such a great thing to say, because a bull needs to reset their feet, right? And Pitbull crews, when you do have a kryptonite as a plodding front foot pressure fighter. You got all the powers in the world with the chin, power, toughness, warrior, you know, never give up, you know, you got all that. Maybe power's a bit overrated, not overrated, but I don't think he's the most powerful puncher, but he can get to you and let his hands go and never give up and got a chin. But if you can turn him and box him, you know, that's always the kryptonite for fighters like that. But I thought he was going to get to Valenzuela. I think Valenzuela, to be honest, I think he likes to get stuck in and fight too. I thought at some point he's going to abandon the game plan, which normally happens. What time is it here? 13 minutes. All right. Cheers for joining me, guys. I'd love to know your thoughts on any of these fights, especially the main event. Because as I said, I was working last night. I didn't get the pay-per-view in the end, because I was going to get it and watch it this morning, but for whatever reason I didn't, because it's just not the same, is it? I really wanted to watch it live, but I had a DJ gig last night. So let me know your thoughts on you, and shout out to the people that thought it was going to be close. You know, certain people got it bang on the money. And you know, respect to Madrimov, his stock went up. Who else was on that undercard that I missed? Yeah, Andy Cruz won, knockout, no surprise there, or at least a win. Is there one more that I'm forgetting? David Morrell. Yeah, a lot of people saying that he didn't look great last night, but you know, moving up to 175 is no joke, man. It's some much bigger guys. You know, these are like that's not too far removed from, these are like the old heavyweights. So it's like a smaller heavyweight back in the day, like back in the 70s or 80s, like a one walking around weight, light heavyweights. You know, these are big guys, you know. So, but I've got to watch the fight. I haven't seen any of, I haven't seen any of the undercards whatsoever. But let me know your thoughts, or who you picked and how you scored the Crawford fight. I've seen so many wide cards from people saying Madrimov only had 3 rounds, to Madrimov won, to a draw. Eddie Hearn, this is funny because he's obviously not happy, but the thing is, right, this is why you can't listen to promoters, because if he had Bud Crawford, he would be saying, oh, you know, yeah, he just nicked it, it was a close fight, he did enough at the end. You know, they'll spin it in the way they want. Of course they are, they're boxing promoters. But Madrimov will be all right, man. He put up an absolutely spirited effort and a controlled, cerebral attempt, sticking to the game plan and being on the big stage and fighting the best fighter in the world, one of, and accounting himself, applying himself really well. I thought Bud won by a couple of rounds, maybe one, but 2 for me by the looks of it, after watching twice without properly scoring it round by round, which you should do, you know, with the complicated criteria. Then, you know, Harold Lederman used to say, well, who's doing more damage? You know, that's another, they used to throw that in there. And then Max Kellerman used to say, well, who would you rather be? You remember that? So you've got those 4 criterias. Then you've got, we'll just throw that out the window. Who's doing more damage? And who would you rather be? Just to simplify it for a non-boxing fan. So it's like, no wonder you get so many different scores. Not when there's that much going on. It's hard to see. But generally, I thought Bud was the ring general. But not because it was more Madrimov wasn't really like effective aggression. You know, that was not quite there, and he wasn't quite fighting the fight he wanted to fight enough. It was one shots here and there, but wasn't enough, you know. And then the defense is kind of, I've got to watch it back, because sometimes when stuff was going on, one of the person's head was out the screen. This is the bootleg I was watching, and then I go to the other side and I'm like, great body shots, and I was like, well, I didn't even see it land. So there was, I think, to be honest with you, the punches that Crawford was landing to the body probably had more effect on the judging than I could see, because body shots, when you're seeing on the screen, are the ones that can sneak in there that you don't really know if they landed. You know, let's just say you're watching the TV and the boxers are like this, and someone gets a shot in here that actually lands. You can't tell. There's no way you can tell. CompuBox obviously is flawed as well. But as I said, I'll be watching that back properly. I'll probably do a little mini analysis. I'm going to be putting a lot more short videos out. And also, I've got a little announcement actually. I am going to be moving the tutorials that I do for beginners onto another channel. I've been desperate to teach boxing for beginners, and just to motivate fighters, and just to share my thoughts on teaching. And it's just been confusing the channel so much that I'm going to move it over to another channel. So I'll have that up soon. I've got the Australian on the map, that is coming out Wednesday or Thursday. That's my next project for sure. And I've got a ton of other exciting projects to join as well. And I'm really looking forward to this next month, because I'm going to be putting a lot of short content out that are going to make more sense for the channel. And let me know if you have any ideas and stuff you want me to cover. Shout out to all the new subscribers. I really appreciate it. Shout out to anybody that's made it this far. Gratitude to you. It's just been pissing it down here in New York. I was going to go for a run, but it just got I just had to stop because it was raining so hard. But I might go out now. Anyway, whatever you do, have a lovely weekend. Have a great week. Let me know your thoughts. Peace and love. I'm out.
Boxing.
Knowledge.